Hello again, and today's element is the fifth mineral that changed the course of history. It is aluminum. Aluminum, or in many other countries called aluminium, like most other metals end with IUM, it is the most common metallic element found on Earth, at least in its crust. Despite its ubiquity, it means it's everywhere, it was not isolated and produced as a pure metal until the 19th century, which seems like a long way ago to us. It was before any of us were born, but in the long history of using metals, it's pretty late. And it only came into widespread use in the 20th century, because although you could make it, it was too expensive to make. It wasn't worth it. With new processes in the 20th century, in the 1900s, there were ways that you could make it and it would be cost effective. In the modern world, aluminum is everywhere in our homes and workplaces. If we had to choose a name for the industrial consumer society that emerged in the mid-20th century, we could call it the aluminum age. And here's an example of aluminum, my beverage container, as well as my other beverage container. But aluminum is a lot more than just beverage containers. Section 1. The pinnacle of the aluminum age. Casting around for a single object that would encapsulate all the achievements, technological, commercial, social, artistic, and economic of the period, I considered various products. This is the author speaking, not me. Should it be the airplane, many of whose components are made of aluminum? Or maybe the computer, which likewise makes extensive use of aluminum? However, after some thought, there was one product that seemed to stand out above all others as a worthy representative of our consumer society and way of life. The aluminum beverage can, used to package beers and sodas. And here we have the nice image of the aluminum can, the pop can. The choice of the beverage might strike the reader as a bit of a joke. Excuse me, the beverage can. But the more I thought about it, the more I decided it was indeed right to go for this artifact. First, the beverage can is made of almost pure aluminum, alloyed with small quantities of other metals. Second, the can is one of the most common mass-produced items currently manufactured in the metal industry, with 100 billion cans produced yearly in the US alone. And that's about one per day per American citizen. And they wouldn't make them if people didn't buy them. Third, the manufacturing process is a marvel of modern automation. And fourth, the can's contents, function, design, and marketing make it perfectly representative of our consumer lifestyle. If Earth were suddenly destroyed by an asteroid, or life on Earth, the only thing that survived were a single beverage can, the crew of a passing alien ship coming across it, floating in the interstellar void, could use it to reconstruct much of our technology and culture, our physical appearance, our physiology, and our biochemistry. The can, which was once the ultimate symbol of our throwaway culture, now leads the way in recycling, a symbol of the new concern for the environmental well-being of our planet and the preservation of its diminishing resources. There's a little sidebar about the 13th element. You can see it over here. The Russian love affair with the metal is celebrated in aluminum, the 13th element, because it is, in fact, number 13, as you can see right here. Aluminum 13. Now, aluminum, the 13th element, is a 240-page tribute to that element, published by the world's largest aluminum company, United Company Rusal, headquartered in Moscow. Although unlikely ever to make the New York Times bestseller list, the book covers the history of the element from antiquity to the modern period, with special reference to the aluminum industry in the former Soviet Union and modern-day Russia. Once the world's leading aluminum producer, Russia has since been overtaken by, guess who? The People's Republic of China, as in so many other things. Section number 2, more precious than gold. Although aluminum is the most common metallic substance in the Earth's crust, it is very rarely found as a native metal. It was only identified as an element in the early 19th century by the British chemist and inventor Humphrey Davy, who discovered it was the metallic base of alum. Remember that from the last video? And that's why he decided to call it aluminum. The Danish chemist Hans Christian Ørsted was one of the first scientists to succeed in producing the first aluminum metal in the first quarter of the 19th century. But the various extraction processes were time-consuming, expensive, and yielded tiny quantities of the metal. During the first half of the 19th century, aluminum was known, but it was regarded as an expensive novelty with few practical applications. For a time, aluminum was more rare and costly than gold, and it was displayed with pride at international exhibitions worldwide. The builders of the Washington Monument decided to cap the giant obelisk in Washington, D.C., with the largest block of aluminum cast at that time, weighing 2.85 kilograms, or just over 4 pounds, to act as the monument's lightning rod. Again, that's in the mid-1800s. And here's a picture of them putting it on top. There it is. And no, that is not the Illuminati. Another story about aluminum. The French Emperor Napoleon III, who was the emperor from about 1850 to 1870, so a good 20 years, longer than his great uncle. He was fascinated by the new lightweight metal because of its possible military applications and also because of its rarity. As an aside, I just learned yesterday that Napoleon III, before he went into politics, of course his family was kind of always in politics, but before he personally went into politics, did his own scientific research. And as a result, he appreciated electricity, which you have to use in order to make aluminum, the metal. And he created a 50,000 franc prize for people who made huge advances in electricity. He gave it out every few years. And unfortunately, when he was kicked out was just when people like Edison and Tesla and a few others were just getting into using electricity. So, when he was overthrown and a republic came back in, the prize went away too. Edison wasn't able to win that money. Anyway, back to Napoleon III. At an imperial banquet, the ordinary guests had to make do with gold cutlery, but the guests of honor were furnished with aluminum cutlery. Considering that the cheapest pots, pans, and utensils are now made out of aluminum, today that gesture would be considered quite an insult, but at the time it was honor. In 1886, two inventors, the American Charles Hall and the Frenchman Paul Héroult, working independently, discovered a commercially viable means of producing aluminum by electrolyzing alumina salts in a solution of molten cryolite. Their method, which became known as the Hall-Héroult process, was soon used to produce thousands of tons of the metal, reducing its cost by a factor of 200. So it only cost 1/200th of what it cost the year before. It made aluminum available for a wide range of industrial and domestic uses. Aluminum is easy to work, and it's durable. It has good resistance to corrosion, and it is lighter than iron or steel. One of its earliest practical applications was in construction, where its weight-to-strength ratio made it a particularly attractive material. I have a nice new lightweight aluminum ladder that I use to climb on the roof and clear away leaves and that sort of thing. And yes, it holds my weight, and it doesn't bend, and it is quite light to carry. It's a wonderful thing. Now, the timing of Hall and Héroult's discovery and its commercial development are not coincidental, even though nobody had discovered it before then, and two independent discovered it that year. The process requires a large amount of electricity, and its development and commercialization coincided with large-scale electrification in Europe and North America. There's a little sidebar, the second sidebar, called Foiled Again. One of the most the familiar domestic applications of aluminum is aluminum foil, which is sometimes mistakenly called tin foil in the UK, because of the earlier product made of that metal that it superseded. And there will be a chapter on tin later on. Aluminum foil was first produced in Switzerland in 1910 and in the US in 1913. Aluminum packaging protects foods and beverages from light, from oxygen, from bacteria, very important, and from bad smells, with the added advantage that it is non-toxic, vastly increasing a product's shelf life. Tin can actually still react with the food after some time, the food and the oxygen, and so it is not quite as good, besides being a slightly more expensive and heavier metal on the whole. So, tin foil, goodbye. Aluminum foil, the best we can do. And now for section 3, planes, trains, and automobiles. Aluminum has a huge range of applications in the modern world. In the home, most kitchens are equipped with a roll of aluminum foil for cooking and wrapping leftovers. The metal is also widely used in construction, so if you live in a modern house or apartment block, your door and window frames are probably made of aluminum. I don't. My house was made in the 1800s and it's still got wood everywhere. The metal's lightness makes it a natural choice for constructs where weight is critical to the composition, such as aircraft design. Although the first cars with aluminum bodies date back to the mid-20th century, the higher production costs of the metal meant most cars were still made of steel even then. However, with the inexorable rise in crude oil prices in the late 20th century, the weight reduction allowed by the use of aluminum car bodies and components has now made the use of the metal economically viable in the automobile industry. The first all-aluminum model rolled off the Audi assembly line in Germany in 1999. Although science has given us many new materials, the versatility of aluminum means we shall continue to live in the aluminum age for decades to come. We're in no danger of running out of aluminum ore, the way that we might run out of oil or coal even. Here's a quote from Art Buchwald, who was a famous columnist in the newspapers. And soon the earth was covered with plastic bags and aluminum cans and paper plates and disposable bottles, and there was nowhere to sit down or walk. And man shook his head and cried, "Look at this god-awful mess." So we often do things to ourselves. And that is the chapter for today. I hope that you enjoyed listening about aluminum, and I will go on to asbestos next week, which has a very bad name.